another KM podcast. Well, I tell you, we've got every kind of points, like power and share, laser and main, bullet and prize, focus and pain, power
NAKM stands for knowledge management, by the way.
laser and main, bullet and prize, focus and pain. Not another KM podcast. Not an NAKM podcast. Not another KM podcast. Not just any other KM podcast.
So Brittany,
So Rachel, we've had a podcast for 4 months.
yeah,
We've done 13,
12, 13.
12, 13
Baker's dozen?
episodes.
Yeah.
And I think it's going well, don't you? I think
Yeah, this is like our quarterly
um,
check-in, like
I think
our
we should keep
performance review.
this is our performance review. This is our quarterly performance review, our first ever quarterly performance review. I give us an A.
Yeah,
I give
an A
us
for
an
effort.
A plus. Yes. And so we had our beginning conversation about each of our own stories, about how you came into knowledge management, how I came into knowledge management. We all kind of accidentally stumbled into it. And it was really interesting that basically almost every single person we talked to had the same thing. And I guess when I think about that, how after we've heard it, 12 or 13 times, that it's kind of a trend that everyone just kind of falls into knowledge management. How, like, if we did that first episode again, would your story change at all? Because I think that at least in the beginning, I thought I was the only one, right? That
Right.
you just kind of fall into knowledge management because it's a thing to do, and it's, you just kind of pick up and do the things. But then as we talked to basically all different types of people in all different types of sectors, it was actually really common. So I think I wouldn't feel so weird about it. I
Right.
guess.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like, I think it falls into two categories. One being that like, well, first, like I've only ever met one person, maybe two, but definitely one who intentionally chose knowledge management, right? One
Mm.
who is, this is what I'm doing from the start. Outside of being a librarian and things like that, if we're talking our field of knowledge management, I've only met one person. So the falling into is huge, especially from the different angles and all of that. When I listened back to the first episode and was thinking through, would my story change? I don't think it would, because it's so common. And it's nice to be like, I don't know, on our own island with like lots of friends. But at the same time,
I like that image. That's a good. I'm gonna think about that. That's really great.
yeah, either that or like Island of Misfit Toys, right? Like that's what I feel like I am sometimes. But if anything, what I hear back on was like how novice and new, I think, as somebody who's very comfortable talking and doing things, like how nervous I was for the podcast, because it was the first time it was like being documented and shared, right? Like
Oh,
KMing
yeah.
our own KM podcast. So I think I heard back some vulnerability, and the vulnerability was more so just me being like nervous of like, hey, do you think people are actually going to listen to this? Are we like crazy? So it's not so much the would I explain it differently as much as it was, would I explain it more confidently? Would I, if I knew what I knew now, that this was going well and I enjoyed it,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. So not
I mean,
quite the same.
we were two nerds with a dream when we started this. But yeah, no, it's gone really well. I think we should be really proud of ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. So what, like with our guests at the party, and would you change how you'd explain KM based on some of the answers we've heard?
I don't think I would. I think I would stick with it because a lot of what our guests explained to like us and their examples were very kind of in a similar vein of, the right info for the right people at the right time. We had, people would reference the reference that I made about plumbing and things. And so I think it was something that was it resonated with people, but also people had their own examples that were kind of similar. So I don't think I would change the way that I explain it, but because what you just reflected on about our first episode, I think I would say it a little bit more confidently. I think at in public spaces, I'm a little bit like, hey, so I'm a nerd and here's what I do. And like, hopefully you like it, and just to be able to say, like, yeah, this is what I do. And it's kind of nerdy, but to be able to say it more confidently. So it's not really how you're describing it. It's the tone in which you're describing it in. Right. So, um, I think that would be what I change more than the example itself.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And it's funny, like, I don't know if I'd rewrite my elevator pitch, but if anything, I have like new words to throw into my experiential
Mm-hmm.
toolbox that I would pull out
Mm-hmm.
and use for different people. Like, I usually change it per context anyway, but like Amy's right info, right people, right time. Um, it's nice to be able to have, something concise and easy, but also something that it can be a little more fun, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, full disclosure here. I took all of our transcripts and threw them into Claude, to see what overcoming themes and things if they're overarching rather, and if it lined up with, like, the list that I had made. So I used AI to help a little bit, but, we had grief, layoffs, and identity as an overarching theme between all of our, guests in some capacity, between Maggie, her distinction between invisible versus quiet, Deb, and her get back up mantra,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, we also have experienced layoffs, like, in the last year, right? So, if we look at the what's it say here? Where do you 2 actually land on proving your value versus it becoming your identity? And has it shifted since we recorded these episodes? Thanks,
Mm.
Claude. That's a great question. Uh,
Mm. Where do we land on proving your value versus it becoming your identity? I think so. First of all, it's really interesting that that is a theme. This
yeah.
this sense of, yeah, we're talking about knowledge management. We're talking about knowledge management tools and problems, and we have this little bit where we like, what buzzword do you want to roast? And like, ha ha ha. But like, everyone has talked about. I went through a really difficult period. I lost this job. I lost this person. I um had to reinvent myself. Like in some form, we've
Mhm.
had all of our guests have shared that with us. And I think that that was really brave of them to do that on a podcast, but also just indicative to us of how human this field really is. And it is
Yeah.
a field full of humans that are doing human work, but also feeling very human feelings. And I think that
Yeah.
that was just that came through very um strongly, right?
Yeah.
To the question, I think that having just and speaking from my own experience, having being a very type A passionate person who works in a sector that is definitely mission driven. So
Mm.
mission driven organizations and mission driven people. And it's very easy to get swallowed up in the mission, the mission, the mission, the mission, no matter what your role is, even in knowledge management, right? And so I think work did become my identity. And it's interesting how these things kind of go in cycles. 10 years ago, I lost my job at a at the Women Peace and Security think tank that I was working for. And I was unemployed for 6 months. It was when Trump was elected for the first time back in 2016, and there was a lot of uncertainty about what would or would not exist. And I was unemployed for 6 months before I started working at World Vision, and that was my first like my job is gone. Who am I as a person? That was my first moment, right? Fast forward 10 years later, again, I'm working in a role that I really care about. I had an awesome team. I was working at the UN, which I was that kid, right? That was like, I'm going to save the world and work for the UN and do all this stuff. Like that was legitimately me. And so, and that was taken away from me. And I did, again, 10 years later, have a moment of now that job is gone. Who am I? Um, obviously, I'm 10 years older and I've done some therapy, I've had some journaling, like, you have more tools than I have more tools than I did 10 years ago, but it was still this moment of, "Now what?" And so
Right.
I think we've been in the game long enough that we know that there is a certain amount of proving your value as a knowledge manager, but I also don't play the game. I think, as much as I used to anymore because of the experience that I have. And now it's not just proving value, it's I'm going to show you the value. I don't have to prove to you that my job, like that the function that I do matters. I'm just going to like I'm going to let the results speak for themselves, basically. And I think that some people would disagree with me because you need things to be visible. You have to have stats. You have to do all this, all this kind of stuff to like keep your job and compete. But I have found with knowledge management, it's a different, it's different. It's harder
Yeah.
to describe numbers to it. It's harder to, what is the contribution versus attribution that knowledge management ultimately brings to achieving a certain outcome. And
Yeah.
so I think for me, um, it is part of who I am because I'm a knowledge management professional and very proudly a knowledge management professional. It is now not my entire identity. So I think there was a little bit of, I had to separate myself from the job, but also like think about and remember why I loved knowledge management in the first place. Like, what is the root
Right.
of why I like to do it in the first place? And hang on to that versus this is part of my identity. And without this, I am nothing. Right. And so I think,
Right.
but KMers, I mean, you know, all the people we talked to were all very passionate people. And when they went through these experiences, everybody had their own, kind of moment. But we had people start new businesses and we had people doing things that, stepping into roles that they'd never been in before and trying new things. And so I think knowledge management, yes, there is process, but then there is this adaptation and there is this growth and, evolution. And I think that our guests really embodied that. And it was really inspiring, honestly, even though that's not like the topic of our podcast per se. I was really glad that that was something that people felt like they could bring up and that our friend Claude picked up on that,
Yeah.
is a theme throughout our podcast.
Yeah. And just to kind of jump off of that one, almost every single person who came on who's experienced layoff this year or has had it at their organization or something has said that the work that they've done didn't feel wasted and it just felt unfinished. So
Yeah.
the question posed here is, do you believe that, or is that something people say to get through? And I genuinely believe our guests when they've said, it just feels unfinished and it wasn't wasted because so my layoff was a bit different than like, I don't want to say everybody else's, but like I was in a position where I I was in a really good spot when I was with the university, and I was waiting for the right time to kind of make my move. So I was, I while it happened and it sucked and the timing of it was not wonderful, it I was like we were okay. And like as a family, like we were good. So and it was my work. It didn't feel wasted at all for me because my mindset, my positioning was different. And what I was able to do and what I was able to accomplish with my team, super proud of that. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
and now, I mean, it gave me the opportunity to open the door and move into some other stuff. And in doing that, it's not so much even unfinished as much as it is, it's like a new chapter, right? So yeah, things weren't really left unfinished for me at the university as much as it was, um, unknown. I think unknown would be better.
Yeah.
But again, I'm just one person who went through a layoff in the last year, right? So
Yeah.
it's something that I don't know. I mean, it's just part of my story at this point. Whereas I think if I was in a different position where I didn't really have a backup plan or didn't have this other thing that I really wanted to pursue with my consulting and projects and things like that, I think it would have been a completely different experience.
For me, the work did feel unfinished. Like I think,
Well, yeah. I mean, your
um,
experience was way different than mine.
yeah, leaving the UN, and there was a lot of people that felt this way. It wasn't as dramatic as, say, USAID, for example, but I
Sure.
think there was a lot of us that were just starting to get like really key momentum going. We were just starting to get people excited about different projects. We were just really coming into our own as a global team when it came to really successful initiatives with, communities of practice and things like that. And so it was a bit of a shame to have things kind of at that moment to feel like the rug had been pulled out from underneath us. And then to not know, to not really have a sense of where things have landed and what is or isn't happening. And it's not just at WFP, it's across the UN system, kind of like what is or isn't happening with all of these different people who are losing their jobs, with knowledge literally hemorrhaging from these organizations and decades and decades and decades of critical knowledge on, climate change, humanitarian response, landmines, like all of these, like we're seeing now, Ebola, like global health. These people, we're losing that knowledge. They're not where they used to be, and we are feeling the repercussions of that, right? So there is a lot that felt unfinished, but I think, again, it doesn't mean that we didn't do our jobs. It's how can how can we be resilient, right? So now it opens whenever a door closes, a window opens, right? So I think it's, yes, it feels unfinished, but what are the other opportunities that we have now that we
Right.
wouldn't have had before?
Yeah, for sure. I can appreciate that. It's definitely one of those things where, I mean, it and I think for you too, because you had some idea it was gonna happen, that long goodbye, right, with
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
unknown. So,
Mhm.
not to add to your experience because I haven't lived your experience, but from, the perspective of a friend who stood by, right, like,
Yeah.
that was kinda what I saw. Just
Yeah.
I think the biggest theme though is, like, it doesn't really for me still, it doesn't feel wasted. It feels like it was just a stepping stone,
100%. Yeah.
but yeah.
Um,
Also, this cat doesn't come downstairs, like, ever, and, she's here now, so
yeah. So it is what it is. She's checking out
my assassinana.
checking out everything. Um,
Oh, you knocked over the assassinana. Great content. Great content.
I mean, we do need like, behind the scenes stuff. So she's giving
Yeah,
us
right?
great content on that.
Yeah, she
So
is.
I think another thing that I thought was interesting that came up a few times is blind spots that knowledge management as a field has. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we started this podcast, was because we care about knowledge management. We wanted to talk about it in a really relatable way, but we also wanted to be pretty honest about
Yeah.
we've been in it for a minute, and we have you know, thoughts and feelings and things. And I think we wanted to be honest about where we saw things going. It was also nice that our guests readily shared their own thoughts about that. So Stan,
Yeah.
when we chatted with him, very honestly was like, KM people don't practice KM on themselves. They
Which
often
is
wait for other
true.
people. Exactly, right? They often wait for other people to step in, or we're so attached to our rhetoric and our jargon. And what does that really mean in the grand scheme of, So I think it was really to have someone at that level also say, like, hey, what are we doing? Was really refreshing. And then it was Jenna, like, oh, everyone does webinars and everyone does repositories because it's easy to measure. But what are other things that we're doing that aren't necessarily, maybe they're not as easy to measure, but they're much more meaningful, right? Why aren't we focusing on those things? And so I think it was just nice to hear from people questioning why we do things, why we've
Yeah.
done them the same way for so long, and how is it possible for us to start doing things, differently? And I guess back to Stan's point, we recycle the rhetoric, we argue about definitions, we never apply what we learn at conferences, or very rarely, like we go to conferences, we have these great conversations, and then do we apply what we learn at these conferences? Have either of us ever done that? I guess
Yeah,
if
I
we were
mean,
to
honestly,
think about us,
yeah. I mean, not so much in the last 4 months,
no.
but I know that well, okay, so let me step back even. I it's a joke among our conference team that I suck at KM, um, like, physically practicing it, and it's not that I suck at it as much as it's just, like, sometimes I'm moving so fast that I just don't I don't always remember to when I save the document, like, where I saved it. Did I save it for everybody to have it, right? Shout out Jess. Also, though, I thinking about that in the way that I've always kind of been that way. Like even at the university, I had a standing calendar invite to remind me twice a week to move things off the desktop and into the cloud. You know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been able to KM some of my own blind spots, but it sort of feels like the whole like, you know, do as I say, not as I do, and I hate that that's the case for me anyway. But uh, I think that, and then from the conference perspective, there have been plenty of times where I've gone to conferences and I had to come right back in and dive right in. So I haven't had the, like, I don't want to say I haven't had the time, but I had the best intentions, but I'd forgotten to apply the things that I knew. Or,
Yeah.
I put them in a folder for me to review later, and then I just, when is later, right?
Yeah.
So I think if anything, this has made me a little more intentional, but also my life has changed a lot in the last year, let alone the last 6
Mhm.
months, right? And yours too. So I think that having the conversations where we can figure out how can we share better, how can I file things in a way that's sustainable, like it's, if anything, it's a reset, and these conversations have been a nice reminder to reset.
Yeah. I like the way you said that. I think for
Thanks.
me, when I was a baby cammer
Yep.
and just learning about all the tools, right? And I was like really excited about this thing that I'd been doing and I didn't have a name for it. It has a name and there are workbooks and there are tools and I'm going to apply this tool. And then I would get so frustrated because it's like, no, this is an after action review. We do it this way to people who had no idea. I might as well have been speaking Chinese, right? Like I was, but I was so attached to the tools and the words, right? Because that's what I had learned. And I was new in knowledge management, but I was so excited about it. And I just wanted people to follow what I was trying to make them do. And that's why I tell people anybody who asks about, do I have to have a certification to do KM? Should I study it for my, degree? Should I do coursework? I'm like, you can, but you have to do it. You have to
Yeah.
do knowledge management. You have to talk to people. You have to try things and then adjust and then try it again because that is how I learned. Because
Oh yeah.
me as a baby cammer giving everybody a worksheet going, this is how we're going to follow this process and everybody going, nope, no we're not. you know? It's
Yeah.
not enough. It's not enough to know the jargon. It's not enough to like have your little tool set and be like, hey guys, I know what we're going to do. You have to be able to sit down with people, look them in the eye and be like, I understand your problem. And here's
Yeah.
how we are going to solve this problem together. Right. And I had
Yeah.
to, and that was learned, right? You're not going to be able to do that right out of the gate most of the time. You have to practice and you have to try stuff and you have to get really frustrated and then you try it again and then you find something that works, but then it doesn't work when you do it with this other team. And that's just how it is. So I think that that's what I was reflecting on is, you know, as a baby KMer to how I am now, wow, like what I would tell myself, right? What would I tell myself 12 years ago, 13 years ago when I really was started to do this? Yeah, that's I think what it made me think about. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. It's funny because you mentioned the after action reviews and the this is how we're going to do things, and just organization, trying to figure out like if I could tell somebody new what you're
mhm,
coming in to, like
mhm.
I think the best thing I could say is just find some tools and use them as your foundation, but don't like live and die by the tools.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. There was, one thing though that kinda stuck out, or well, not even stuck out, but, as a couple years, 3 or 4 years ago, I did, did a virtual conference, and the session that I gave was "You Can Do It All, Sort of," and it was about how KM has allowed me
Excellent
to be able to
title.
do it all, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and part of that with the KM piece that went along with that, whereas I was able to apply some of the tools to my life, and that's what I was trying to explain to people, that,
Mm,
you can do lots of things, with some basic KM principles, like calendars and filing things and organization and stuff like that, and looking back on it, it was kind of like at the height of my crazy grief where I was doing, like, all sorts of stuff to keep myself insanely busy and all of that,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
Thinking back on what tools I'm still applying from that session, I live and die by my calendar, but I also have, opportunities to improve and just pivot a little bit. And I think that the growth that I experienced through KM is uh, daily, because while I have the tools and the foundations that I can apply, it's a little bit different to be able to like actually do it and have it see effects in my life. We're working on a project now, um, where I am the KM expert, and we're doing some KM in a space where we're building a knowledge base. And the funny thing is, like, I've been on KM teams where we've, contributed to taxonomy and we've done, building things out. And I know all of the theory behind it, but it's that practice of like actually doing the thing,
Hmm.
which is funny because, you know, I explain it like it's baking a cake, right? Like, I know how to bake a cake, but that doesn't mean I can go out and make a nice wedding cake tomorrow, right? I have all the
Yeah.
theories behind how I can do these things, but it's going to take a lot of practice to actually put into action uh, some of the tools, right? Like, not to say that, like, I've got theory coming out of my ears, and I have limited practice when it comes to certain things that are not my typical wheelhouse, like building that taxonomy or, developing templates, like stuff that's not my people focused, knowledge transfer focused mindset. So I think that being able to have some of these conversations, but also know who else I can tap in my network. Like, I reached out to Thaiska to be like, hey, you're great at taxonomy. I've been sitting and staring at this for 3 days now, and I think I'm overthinking it. What do you got? Right? So being able to tap in the other experts in the room as
That's
well.
awesome. Yeah.
Ways.
I want to talk about our conference and the episode that we did with some of our other Empower KM co-founders. I think not to duplicate anything that we talked about already in that episode. As we think about, what we were able to accomplish and what we've heard, since the conference, but also since that episode, about empower and what people are doing and what they're up to. I think now with a bit more distance, we've had a lot of reflection on kind of like what we want to do, and we've started, now that we've gotten the planning for 2027 like really going, it's something that we come back to a lot, which I think is great. But I think, what have you seen as far as kind of keeping that alive? We've got a newsletter, we've got people, we've people have already started to reach out to us like, when can I apply to be speaker, right? Which is great.
Yeah.
To have people be excited. I guess, how are we feeling? Like, I think it's just what, we logistically, we know what we need to do, but I think as we think about, you know, the lessons that we learned, how are we really going to make sure, that 2027 is the best that it can be? And I think
Yeah.
we can't control the weather, right? There was a whole conversation we had about the weather in that reflection episode about, the force majeure that we can't like account for. But I think we learned a lot about not underestimating the people who we have, and
Yeah.
also not worrying, I think, about size. I think we were, at least I, in the beginning was like, oh, let's make it, 50 to 100 people. And I think we ended up having like 40, 35
Yeah,
or
it was just
40
shy
or
of
something.
50.
And so, but it was perfect. And that was exactly what we needed it to be. Right. So I think, I learned to trust the process a bit, and also that we are onto something. We had that
Yeah.
worry. We had that worry in the beginning, like, what if no one comes? What if no one sees the value in this? Like, what if, you know, and people came and they really enjoyed it and they're excited for next year already. And so I think that that's, we are actually, there was like a thirst for this. There was
Yeah.
a gap that we are filling, which I think I at least was not surprised by, but like pleasantly surprised by. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no,
so,
I would agree. Yeah, now that the momentum is starting to pick up and we're starting to like really kind of get into it, um, it feels different this year, right? Because for me anyway, like last year was us like, well, what is this going to look like and how are we going to do it? Like, we have a framework this year.
We do.
And while we're going to bring the stuff that worked and was good, like we have improvements we want to make. We have new things we want to try with the right support. We have adoption and buy-in. Of course, it'd be great to have more. But being able to do things a little bit differently, like, I mean, even the partnership with Dublin and Knowledge Summit Dublin, like that's
Yes.
awesome that
Mhm.
they are being so supportive. And
Mhm.
it's nice to have that embraced, like being embraced, as well as with KM World embracing us as well and being excited and just saying, hey, look, like this is another option, right? I think that being able to establish ourselves in that capacity among the conferences, among the people of the KM community, gives a sense of legitimacy that I think is helping kind of fuel me for next year and just all the things that are coming. I'm really excited about it. So um, I think the ripple effect is definitely still there. I think
Mhm.
that, I'm a little like I know it was like a slow start because we all crashed after the conference and then trying to get back into it. But the difference is we have a framework this year and we're actually like we're doing really well. So it's a matter of getting things up and going. We announced that, early registration's open. We announced that we're gonna do a workshop this year. We
Mhm.
announced all sorts of stuff and that has been embraced really well. There've been lots of questions. There's been enthusiasm, like I can't wait to go. What are the dates so I can put it on my calendar again? Okay, cool. Right. So I think that it's not a one-off high as it's much as it is that true ripple that comes throughout. So I feel excited. I feel encouraged. I'm hoping that everybody who came last year brings a friend so we can double the crowd. I mean, a small but happy crowd is still a small but happy crowd, right? And we're taking things off. We're getting there. So
Yeah. No, I think and we mentioned this earlier when we were talking about like refinding, what makes us love KM in the first place. I think this
yeah.
conference really helped. It helped me do that. Um, because we didn't start this conference like for our own benefit. It was something that we saw as a need and we knew that we could be the people to help fill that need. And I feel now that we've done a few issues of our newsletter and hearing what our community members are up to, they're launching businesses and they're doing blogs and they're speaking on podcasts and talking about empower in those spaces, right? And so I
Yeah.
think we've created this beautiful community that I hope continues, and I think that it will. And something that is truly a addition, right? We didn't duplicate anything that already was out there and existed. This was something that didn't exist before, and I'm really proud of us, right? Like I know that it's not necessarily about us, but like I'm really proud of us as a team. And then also really proud of our community who showed up for that first. They believed in this new conference that had never
Right.
happened before. Um, through snow and rain and all the weird weather that was happening in February, right? So I'm so proud of us, but also that community for believing in us. And I think 2027 is going to be really like we had our pilot year, we know what works. And I think 2027 is really going to be like a momentum year for us, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree too, and to have people reach out and say, "Hey, I want to be part of it. How can I help?" Right?
hmm
Like that's so
hmm
indicative of the KM community in general, but it's nice to see that with our community.
yeah.
Cool. So,
So,
um, thinking about predictions, like obviously we're 4 months out, so having crazy predictions of like things that have happened. The thing is citing here stands Trojan horse theory, becoming an AI person, then become a KM person by stealth. Like,
mm,
do you think that like, I'd love to reflect on that. I would love to the frame of the house that Rob used and how you were talking about furniture. And then Deb talking about how, TikTok creators are actually doing KM without knowing it. Like,
uh-huh.
I've been saying that for a while. I'm glad that Deb's running with it though, because it's truly a thing in my mind that it like KM and like it's all over the social medias. It's just how you use it, right? But it's like garbage in, garbage out. Like there, sure, I'm gonna watch some train wreck videos here and there, but I'm also gonna watch them when I want to figure out how to change the brake light on my motorcycle, right? Like
Exactly.
I gave a lot of words there, but like, what are you thinking about? Do you think Stan's Trojan horse theory will like come to light with AI, especially
As
right now?
far as AI, yeah, I think
Yeah.
because AI is changing so quickly and the pendulum is swinging really, really far this way. Eventually all things that swing really far are going to come back around. I do think that what he was saying about if being the KM person, a pure KM person is not the way, okay, there are other entry points. I do think um is already being borne out. I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, become the AI person because usually people have dedicated AI people anyway. Or it's a tech person or it's the IT person. So what I would say is in whatever role you have, become the person that connects that AI person to other parts of the house because we know that knowledge management, whether you have it in your title or whether it's just part of like the function that you do, you're a connector, you're a collaborator, you're somebody who can, okay, well, you need to speak to this person or this needs to be connected with this and like make that connection. And I think that you don't have to become the AI person. You can work with the AI person and be a bridge to those other things. That I do see as something that's not going to go away no matter what AI does, right? No matter how it
Mhm.
swings and how it goes there. And I think that's the reason why I'm hesitant to say, okay, we need to be the AI people because that's eventually going to change, right? We're going to need these people that can translate AI to or make these bridges between other functions. But that's just my opinion. But I think that be the person that works with the AI person and connect them to, all right, well, how do we talk to comms and how do we talk to HR and how do we talk to these other functions to make sure that the AI that we're doing is actually achieving the goals that we want to achieve. And those are basically knowledge management goals, right? So I think that that stealth is still there. It's just a little tweak in kind of how we approach it. I think that would be
Yeah.
my view.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because like so many KM roles don't have KM titles.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining as things start to progress, a lot of AI roles, even though they all say AI right now, like there's going to be AI
Mhm.
embedded in the other roles as well. So being able to apply what you know and falling back into that theory and that practice, like I had mentioned earlier, being able to apply it and just recognize, hey, look, it might not be the title, but I have the tools. Let's throw it in there.
And I think Deb is spot on about TikTok. Like I make fun of TikTok because I feel like it makes me feel old and I don't understand a lot of the dances or the challenges and all the kind of stuff like that. It's just like kids eating Tide Pods and that's what I think of, right? But now that we do have a TikTok for this podcast. And now that I've been on the platform a bit more, there is so much learning content, like
Yeah.
legitimate learning content, not like whatever goofy, here's how to do this weird thing, like legitimate learning content, educational content. There's a lot of trainings on there. There's a lot of, or like you said, here's how to change the carburetor in your car, and here's how to change it. Like that type of knowledge exchange is everywhere. And don't think I really appreciated that because all you hear is the goofy stuff or the dangerous stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of knowledge sharing that really isn't, it's some kind of knowledge, but it's not beneficial knowledge. You know what I mean? There's a lot of weird stuff. So if you cut through all of that, yeah, those creators have been generating and sharing and managing knowledge for a long time. And I think that that is a space where, and if you search knowledge management, there's a lot of KM content that's already there. Um, and it's not as popular as some other things, but there is KM content that's there. So I think I didn't appreciate that side of it, and I have a bit more of an appreciation um, now that I kind of manage a TikTok page, which that's a very strong way to put it because I'm not an expert at all. So shameless plug, if any of you listening are really good on TikTok and want to help us out, uh,
Have you noticed any of your AI use changing at all since like it's been brought to light? Like just like I mean, it's part of the conversation all the time, but like, have you noticed if you're using it differently or have application of it all?
I don't think so. I think if anything, I have even like 10 toes down on my view that like you need to use it as a thought partner. It does not replace my own quality assurance. It doesn't replace my own brain, you know what I mean? Like, so for example, when I do my LinkedIn posts, I write those, but I have Copilot. I will say, I'm thinking of these specific topics. What are ideas that I could do for posts? And it's a brainstorming conversation. I don't have AI write my stuff because there is a trust recession, right? So in business
Right.
and in a lot of areas right now, and now especially since I have my own consulting, I've been seeing this a lot. There is a huge trust recession for people like you and I who are consultants and doing this whole thing. And part of that trust recession is coming from AI slop, right? Is coming from
Yeah.
this using AI content. Did you actually generate this yourself? Is this actually your intellectual property? Is this, and I want to be as far away from that as possible. And so
Right.
I think if anything, it has reinforced kind of how I already use it, but even strengthened it to make sure that whatever I'm doing, even as we're writing our book, Rachel, to make sure
Yeah.
that however I'm involving AI is very, very, very on the thought leadership or on the thought partner brainstorming, high level use and not the do this work for me and not replacing anything that I would bring to something. And I
Right.
think that that is, yeah. And I already was using it to kind of do things that, um, draft me a template for blah, 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 like things that you don't have to spend a whole lot of time doing it that are manual that you just
Sure.
create one time and then you can duplicate it. It's fine. But I think that's really where, yeah, I think I've dug in, if anything, to be like, yes, no, I had the right approach. I'm going to stick with this approach.
Same.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, I've used it like again, similar to you. I write all my own stuff. Sometimes I'll have it edit my work. Like yesterday, I had to write an email and I was like, make this sound less mean. And it like I used it for
Please
that.
make me
But
sound nicer.
all right, but I will also give it
But yeah,
explicit direction. Like that was one. But I
yeah.
mean, there are other ones where I'll be like, okay, here's the piece I've written. I want you to only edit for typos and grammar, right? Like that's, and it'll help me there. Sometimes it'll be like, have you considered phrasing this sentence this way instead? And I'm like, oh, well, I had, or I haven't, or whatever. But like all of my writing is mine. And I have an editor
Yes.
now.
Yep.
Again, that will not replace a real human editor who can actually like read and understand and think through and have feelings and connections to our writing. But it's definitely helped out when I've written an article for LinkedIn or when I've,
Mhm.
written a proposal. Like, make sure everything is spelled correctly here. Right.
Yes.
So,
Or make sure, is this understandable to a fifth grader? Or you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like as far as like, because I know that that's also a problem I have is I can write a lot of things really well, but is a broad audience going to understand it? So I think having AI kind of do that check. But again, that doesn't replace, I still will
Right.
make I don't ask them, it to do that for me. I ask it to point it out and then I do the work. I think that at the end of the day, I need to do the work. Yeah, because I
Oh, yeah.
think you and I are both a similar age where I at least like critical thinking was a class. It was like it was critical reasoning and it was one of those things where you had these questions on the SATs, right? It was something where you had to practice it. And
Right.
now it's a really interesting and slightly terrifying environment that kids today kids today are
Oh,
going to school and that that kind of critical thinking piece is not there. It's
right.
completely skipped over with AI and I personally the way that I use AI is I don't want to lose that.
Right.
Um
Yeah. Because it
and I
can
know that
definitely
people might have
make you learn
different
more.
opinions and like we should be really embracing it and we should be doing this but for me I think that's where I balance it is if it replaces my own thinking and my own quality assurance and my own ethics and my own voice, no. That's where,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It's funny you talk about critical thinking and the things there. When we were meeting with my son's fifth grade teachers team for the end of the year as they were working on his transition for sixth grade, we said, hey, what's something that we can do to continue supporting him? Like, and the teacher straight up said, this is not just a your kid gap. This is a gap for like all fifth graders right now. And it's the critical thinking piece, right?
Mhm.
It's being able to use the inference and being able to think through, okay, well, if this happens, then this and this and this will happen.
Mhm.
And not really overthinking, but just basic thinking. So she said to ask more questions, to do things like that. So it seems to be a trend amongst a lot of kids, not just because of AI, but just
Yeah.
in general too. Like I
That's
could
really
go off of my whole
interesting.
yeah, I could go off of my whole soapbox about what the pandemic did. Um, just high level real quick. Like, I mean, when my youngest was in kindergarten, that's when the pandemic happened. So next thing you know, you have this kid who hates coloring, primarily coloring because it's school is all remote at that point. Uh, and it was definitely eye opening to see that. And from a social perspective too, where I heard a stat yesterday, and I don't know if it's a real stat because I saw it online and I haven't actually like dug into it yet, but it was like prison inmates spend more time outside than the average teenager. Um,
Wow.
yeah, right. So I don't know if that's true or not. Like I could probably fact check it for our fact check, but like regardless, crazy to even think about it, right? So, like, I mean, when you have the social pieces, at least like you and I are of the generation where, yeah, we had video games and some technology, but also we would put it down and go outside. We would meet up with friends and go to the mall. We would do different things with social groups. And now it's becoming harder, and I think a lot of it is because of the kids who were in school during the pandemic. Like, I look at my eldest who just graduated high school this year, and she was in middle school when that happened. And in middle school, I think it was the summer between, like, 8th and ninth grade is a huge growth experience anyway.
Yeah.
But when you think about even the things that you learned and did in all of those interactions in middle school, when most of your middle school is remote because of a global pandemic, of course, some of those social skills and some of those interactions are going to look differently. So it's just really interesting to kind of see what the connections are and
Mhm.
how just basic knowledge sharing, basic communication can also support that, and the critical thinking that goes along with it too. It's a random tangent. Apologies, but
No, but I mean, it's interesting. And I think things that we don't really even think about is how we know, knowledge and knowledge management has gone through human history, has gone through many iterations, right? So you had the Renaissance and the information age, and now it's the AI age, and now it's gonna be something new like all the time. But how a pandemic impacts that, I don't really
oh
even
yeah,
think anybody has unpacked. We think about education, we think about social skills, but the knowledge, we haven't, I don't think we've even begun to kind of think through that.
right,
And the human, the skills and the human part of it, how it was impacted by it, and what does that mean for the field, and what does that mean kind of, and I think that's another reason why having our conference is so important, because it also gives people that springboard, right, to kind of learn. And then if they want to practice those things, then they can. They have a safe environment to do that, right? So I think it's something to think about.
yeah, yeah, and I could do a whole episode on my theories behind it, but I will spare
Maybe
you all
maybe at
that right
some
now.
point we can do that. We can do that at some point. Here's a question. Do you have a question that you didn't ask a guest, but that you wish that you did? Like, do you have a question that you're like, I should have asked this person this thing and I didn't?
Like right off the top of my head, no, because I think that we're really good about, asking while we're doing, or like if I think of something, being able to like circle back to it either later in the conversation or ask after. So right off the top, no, I don't. I wish I had like something that I could provide here aside from, oh no, like I've asked everything, but like my brain isn't always wired that way, right? Like it's well, let me recant that one. I am always somebody who's like, I should have said that. Or, like I don't get nervous before these things. I get nervous after the fact. And it's not even with this, but just speaking or anything like that in general, because I always am like, oh, I wish I had said it this way, or I wish I had asked this. Um, but I actually haven't really had that with our podcast
Okay.
because I feel like the conversations have been pretty natural, and as the questions have come up, they've landed for the most part. And yeah, so I don't know. What about you? Do you have one that sticks out?
I think I might have dug in a little bit more with Stan, but mostly because I think what he was saying about knowledge managers taking their own hype too seriously, and we need to be more, this wasn't
Provocative.
his word, but yes, he didn't necessarily say that word, but it was, we need to do more things that are like that. And I had wanted to I wish that I had dug in a little bit more about, like, he gave us examples, but in his mind, how can we be more provocative? Is empower one of the examples of being more provocative?
Right.
What are things that we can continue? I would have asked another question or two to kind of really, you know, how can we be better rebels, kind of thing? Because I think that
Yeah,
you're,
I could see
yeah,
that.
hearing from
And
somebody, because somebody at that level, because that's a conversation I've been wanting to have, like, just in general, right? But to have it with somebody like Stan, I would have asked another. I don't regret, like, the way that the interview went. It was a really great conversation, but I would have asked another question or two to kind of really have him, like, get into that with him.
yeah.
Because I 100% agree, and I think it just would have been a great, to kind of go deeper in that conversation.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because that like I guess if anything, like not one specific question comes to mind, but like sometimes in reflection, being able to ask that one more deep question, like that, take
Yeah.
it that one step further, that layer, it would be helpful. And I think that just comes with interviewing and practicing and all of that as
Yeah.
well, right? Like, but also we have relationships with these people, even if we hadn't met them before, where we can go back to them and say, hey, like, I didn't think of this before, but what about this? And then it sparks whole new conversations. So there's that for me. I love how Matt flipped the interview on us. And
Yeah.
then, like that was pretty cool. We haven't had many guests. Like some guests have asked questions, but like nobody really like stepped in quite like Matt did. And
Mhm.
that was a really powerful conversation for me, just in general. It was just nice to be able to, I think, be asked something I haven't been asked before, but also having that having the chutzpah to be like, "Hey, I'm gonna ask you questions now," and it's like, Heck yeah, let's do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was interesting for me.
I also appreciated Thaiska, our
Oh
most
yeah,
recent episode. She also kind of flipped the tables with us, and gave us that assessment, like, live, right? That was,
yeah,
we did the assessment ahead of time, but we didn't know our results. We didn't have an explanation of the results until that episode. And so I think that also was really nice to have somebody tell us things, and us to be the ones going, oh, yeah, that's really interesting. I see how that connects with things. And just, like, that kind of dynamic shift was also refreshing. I
yes,
appreciated that.
yeah, same, same. I, I that was a cool episode too because I learned a lot about myself that, like, in theory, I already knew, but it was just such a different perspective and different light that was
Yeah.
really pretty cool to be like, "Oh, I guess that does make sense as to why I do this." It was really funny though because, I was talking to Nina later and I was like, "Guess where my woo is?" And she was just like, "Oh, it's gotta be," and I was like, "Nope." It's not, and she's like, "Holy cow." Like, it's
Yeah.
just funny to have these preconceived ideas of, well, I didn't even know what "woo" was until I asked, but, like, to have these preconceived ideas of, like, where I sit in the world, but
Hmm.
to actually see it spelled out in that way. So it was
Hmm.
really cool. But I've learned something from each and every one of our guests, and it's been really a fun ride. So I'm thinking we should do
Yeah.
it again for the next quarter.
I think so too.
Just
I
go
think we
quarter
should
by
keep
quarter at
going.
this point.
We should just
Yeah.
keep going. I think we're doing good. I think we're on a good path. Although, I mean, if you're listening or if you're watching and you want to be a guest or you have ideas or you want us to talk about a specific topic, let us know.
Yeah.
Send us an email, NAKM,
NAKMPOD.
NAKMPOD@gmail.com. And yeah, thanks for listening to our Q1 performance review. We give ourselves an A plus.
A for effort.
A for effort. But I think, we've also learned a lot about podcasting. And I think
Oh yeah.
we've learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about podcasting. You listen to the first episode and you listen to us now. I think we found our rhythm. It's not that we didn't
Yes.
sound good before. We sounded good before, but we sound even better now. And I think that it's something that will just keep getting better and better. So thanks for everyone who watches and listens, and hopefully subscribes, because you're on this journey with us and we're going to keep going. So thanks for
Yeah.
being along for the ride so far.
Roll the outro. This episode of Not Another KM Podcast was edited by me, Rachel Teague. It was produced by Rachel Teague and Brittany Persinger. Our fantastic theme music was created by Chase Tremaine Music. Questions, comments, quips, quotes, or conundrums? Reach out to us at nakmpod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support.